You really think you can leave me? Even if you go through with the divorce, I'll still take half of your paycheck. At least if you stay, we can still have fun once in a while. I stared at the woman in front of me, the woman I had loved and trusted for 5 years. But now she was a stranger. I am a 38-year-old man, married to my 32-year-old wife for 5 years, and lately it seems as though she has transformed into someone I no longer recognize. When we crossed paths, we were both firmly rooted in our respective lives, and initially it seemed as though we were aligned in our values. I attended a trade school where I acquired skills for a highly technical profession. Initially, I found myself in less than ideal entry-level positions, but through perseverance, I demonstrated my capabilities and established a solid reputation in coding. Eventually, my references became more valuable than my formal education. My wife holds a graduate degree and occupies a management role. This led to what I perceived as a somewhat amicable tension in our dynamic at that time. In the beginning, I voiced my grievances regarding middle management. I perceived them as obstacles standing in the way of completing my tasks. My wife viewed middle management as essential for guiding personnel and managing resources. Personally, I found myself ensnared in a web of ineffective middle managers who viewed code developers as mere cogs in a machine, interchangeable and disposable. They established unrealistic deadlines, assured clients of features, and fostered an environment of scope creep. Each time I recounted the latest foolish decision my manager had put into place, she consistently favored his perspective. She had never crossed paths with him. "He perceives aspects that escape your notice," she remarks after nearly a year of their relationship. I discovered that sharing the details of my workday with her is futile unless it pertains to days off or promotions. I often sensed a lingering resentment from her regarding my decision not to pursue a 4-year or graduate degree. She brought it up frequently in the early days of our relationship, even before we tied the knot. However, once I laid out the reality of student loans and debt, the conversation seemed to fade away. At the time of our marriage, she was relatively free of debt, just as I was. Our earning potentials were quite similar as well, approximately 2 years prior. I began my journey with a company led by an owner who engaged with me personally. He recognized my worth and the potential I held. Today, I earn 50% more than my wife, and my manager is someone who collaborates effectively with me. Although he isn't a technical lead, he truly exemplifies the essence of a Scrum Master. I would say he understands the importance of giving me space, though that might imply a sense of opposition. He is an exceptional supervisor. The initial 4 years of our marriage unfolded beautifully. I refrained from voicing grievances about my work managers, and she never pressured me to invest thousands into a mere piece of paper laden with debt. We enjoyed ourselves, embarking on date nights multiple times each month, sharing hobbies, cooking side by side, diving into books together, and watching movies as a duo. When the initial lockdown arrived, we found ourselves working from home. Our home is quite lovely, boasting 3 spare bedrooms, which we envisioned would be perfect if we decided to have children. One room had already been transformed into my office, and as the lockdown commenced, we repurposed the second room into her workspace. While we both engaged in telecommuting, our approaches to it diverged significantly. I would rise early, prepare breakfast, shower, shave, and don a suit before stepping into my home office. While I have a disdain for suits and ties, they do manage to usher me into a mindset of productivity, signaling that it's time to engage in work. My wife, on the other hand, rises from her slumber, enjoys her breakfast, brushes her teeth, slips into a t-shirt and sweatpants, and heads to her office with the iPad in hand, indulging in a game of Candy Crush amidst her emails. It seems that I perceive it as work from home, while she views it in the same light. I veer off course. It's a curious phenomenon how closeness can foster separation. Her schedule is packed with multiple meetings each day, evident by the way her door remains wide open, allowing me to overhear snippets of conversation. In contrast, I have just one meeting daily, a brief scrum that wraps up quickly. I shut my door 5 months ago, seeking solitude. She expressed feeling insulted by my choice to close it during our daily scrum. I tried to explain that it was a matter of peace, a way to maintain my focus on work. yet she perceived it as if I were concealing something. I made an effort to continue our shared hobbies, but she dismissed them, arguing that we already spent ample time together. In hindsight, I should have pressed the issue, but I didn't. I viewed the lockdown as a temporary phase. Perhaps I should have reconsidered that perspective. The situation deteriorated significantly when her company decided to implement a partial reopening of the office. She seized the opportunity to join the 50% of the company that returned to the reconfigured office, designed to facilitate social distancing. I understand her feelings. I too long for the days spent in the office. However, my company has yet to reopen its doors. As long as I can access my development environment, it truly isn't necessary. It seems that a number of her colleagues have woven themselves into her thoughts, suggesting she linger after hours to socialize, perhaps sharing drinks at a coworker's residence. My curiosity piqued. I probed further, yet she remained elusive and protective of her feelings. She grew increasingly distant as well. At that moment last month, during a weekend, it seemed as though I had a roommate rather than a wife. She placed her old iPad on the desk and inquired, "Could you wipe this?" I wished to present this to my niece as a gift. I shrugged. I frequently engage in such activities for my family and didn't give it much thought afterwards. She attended yet another company gathering while I powered on the iPad. Perhaps my wife was growing increasingly audacious. Perhaps she assumed I wouldn't verify it and would simply opt for a factory reset. I took the time to look and discovered her messages, along with pictures and videos within the app. I find myself in the company of her superior. For the past 2 months, they have been entangled in a secret affair. The sensation coursing through my veins is beyond words. It felt as though blood had congealed into ice. It brought to mind the moment in equilibrium when the polygraph flatlined. I meticulously gathered everything, packaged it into the cloud storage I utilize for development projects, distinct from my work, and began my search for a lawyer. Initially, I hesitated to confront the situation, uncertain of how I would respond. The novel sensation coursing through my body was akin to a state of numbness, as if I were traversing a liquid realm. She seemed oblivious, or perhaps indifferent, to the fact that by then, we had already become a lifeless space. We found ourselves firmly entrenched in the roommate phase, it seems. I reached out to a lawyer who insisted on further investigation while advising me to remain silent. For the past 4 weeks, he has been recommending that I hire a private investigator, even pointing out a particularly good one. We were meticulously collecting evidence while he diligently prepared the divorce filing. Exercise patience. He continued to speak, his words piercing through my ice-filled veins, while her indifference rendered it all too simple at the outset. Just yesterday, my lawyer informed me that the filing was nearly complete. Our state bears the blame, and the private investigator has gathered photos, videos, and the text to support our case. It was undeniably a decisive victory. Then last night, something inexplicable occurred within me as the ice transformed into fire. She arrived home late, as expected, and the words she spoke have faded from my memory. In a moment of frustration, I blurted out that I hoped it was worth it to be with her boss. She became cruel, spiteful, and vengeful. She expressed that I failed to provide her with emotional support, accusing me of merely lounging at home all day. Despite being the primary earner, she felt I lacked intellectual engagement, even though my work was in a highly technical field. I informed her of my legal representation, and she erupted into laughter. She remarked that my bluff was utterly pathetic. Leaving her was not an option. Even if I chose divorce, she would claim half of my paycheck. By staying, I could at least enjoy the occasional intimacy. I had to be careful not to jeopardize the situation. She had transformed into someone entirely new. I told her that isn't what a marriage looks like. She let out another laugh. Darling, we are living in the 21st century. I wish for us to enjoy her cake while savoring every bite. She chuckled once more before retreating to her slumber. I reached out to my boss via email, expressing my need for a week off to address a family matter. He, of course, acquiesced to the request. I found myself on the couch in my office, the remnants of sleep still clinging to me. This morning, as I was getting dressed, she slipped away, leaving only a fleeting remark. "Don't wait up." I made my way to my lawyer's office, where he informed me that the papers were prepared. Accompanied by a process server, he inquired how I wished to proceed with the service of the documents. I informed him. My lawyer, bless his heart, chuckled and cautioned, "You'd best not. I've encountered numerous individuals eager to engage in some whimsical or vengeful serving, and I've consistently dissuaded them. Judges, after all, lack a sense of humor." He warned me that this could jeopardize my alimony or assets. I was indifferent to her words, which seared my soul. All I desired was for her to feel the same flames. The lawyer, despite his best efforts to dissuade me, eventually yielded when he recognized the depth of my resolve regarding this matter. The process server. He listened to my concept. He chuckled heartily and declared, "You're my hero." I found myself in the position of needing to place a special order, accompanied by an expedited fee. I dispatched the process server to retrieve the documents and deliver them to my wife's workplace. Upon completion of his task, he recounted the events that transpired. He mentioned that he arrived at her office, carrying a large box filled with papers. He stumbled upon my wife, engaged in lively conversation and laughter with a circle of co-workers and friends, and inquired about her name. She confirmed it and asked what was on his mind. He placed the box on a nearby desk and opened it. Inside lay a cake, the kind that could be adorned with a custom image and frosting. I had been blissfully unaware of such a thing until this very morning. The image depicted my wife and her boss in a warm embrace, attired yet unmistakably engaged in their verbal pursuits. Here lies your cake, adorned with piped icing that elegantly frames the image above. The process server placed the papers beside the cake on the table. "You have been officially notified." He recounted that what followed was a piercing screech from her, witnessed by at least 8 individuals in the office, all of whom beheld the cake. My wife panicked and knocked the large cake box off the table, where it tumbled onto the carpet. Yet the image remained discernible. As her colleagues unleashed their harsh words upon her, she found herself overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face as her cries echoed in the air. The process server, sensing the turmoil, made a swift exit. My phone erupted in chaos, yet I continued to direct her calls to voicemail. I find little reason to engage with her messages. She hasn't returned home, yet her mother messaged me to say that she will be staying there for the time being. The exhilarating sensation of the cake was truly delightful. Yet as time unfolds, I find myself reflecting on my lawyer's words now. Have I made a mistake here? Let us take a moment to review the latest developments. I find myself enveloped in gratitude for the outpouring of support I've received over the past week. Though I remain away from work, my boss has graciously extended my time off to 2 weeks rather than the one I initially requested. What a good man he is. He has already divided our savings equally. Deposit my portion into an account under my name and adjust the auto-pay settings for the mortgage, along with the credit freezes and so forth. All the actions my attorney recommended regarding the household finances. To begin with, we do not have any children. Secondly, I am consulting a therapist who specializes in addressing issues related to infidelity. I have encountered him on 2 occasions, and I find myself feeling significantly more centered. There are still a few peculiar low points, yet the fluctuations between the two are nowhere near as pronounced. Following the cake incident, I will certainly heed my lawyer's counsel on all matters from here on out. He mentioned that one can choose to be happy or to be right when it comes to following his advice, and I understand that now. He informed me that should my wife wish to return home, I am not legally permitted to evict her. However, he advised that I should document all interactions with her. She remains at her mother's place, yet she expressed a desire to visit on Saturday for a conversation. My lawyer advised me that I could proceed, but he expressed a preference for the discussion to take place at his office, with her own lawyer present alongside him. I conveyed this to her via email, and she replied that she did not have a lawyer. My lawyer advised that, aside from visiting his office, I should have witnesses present and record the meeting. I informed my wife that this was my stipulation for engaging in conversation with her. To my surprise, she agreed. I invited 2 mutual friends to join us, and we placed our phones on the table, poised to capture the moment. When she arrived, she attempted to offer me an awkward hug, but I raised my hand, signaling the start of the recording as the 4 of us settled around the kitchen table. She appeared genuinely apologetic, expressing that she felt as if she were watching a movie rather than taking control of her own life. Yet amidst it all, there was an exhilarating rush that coursed through the air. She inquired whether I was interested in understanding the reasons behind my words, but at that moment, I truly felt indifferent. She believed she owed me an explanation and proceeded to share that upon returning to the office after its reopening, she formed close bonds with three female colleagues, each a few years her senior, two of whom were divorced. She revealed how they subtly infiltrated her thoughts, imparting notions of deserving more than what she currently had. Incessantly, they inquired about the details of her domestic existence. The ringleader seemed to be delving into my psyche, all in the name of my wife's narratives. My wife recounted my struggles with managers from my early career, and the ringleader interpreted this as a sign that I felt threatened by educated individuals. He told her that I was a submissive male and that she required a take-charge man in her life. He suggested that if I were to discover this, I might have reacted with anger and threats, but ultimately I should fall in line. My wife retains her position for the time being, but it hangs by a thread. The individuals who beheld the cake were my wife and the three witches. Her affair partner, or perhaps her boss, along with two other co-workers who were on the same level as her, were involved in the unfolding drama. The boss swiftly terminated the affair, instructing her to limit all communication to email. He made it clear that if she ever attempted to visit his office alone, there would be consequences. He would promptly summon a colleague. The three witches confronted her without hesitation, launching into a public tirade about her dreadful actions. Her colleagues, as she perceived, were reluctant to entangle themselves in her melodrama. Thus, no reports will be made to HR. Her three friends' sudden change of heart jolted her out of her haze. She appeared deeply embarrassed and mentioned that she needed to request $5,000. Confusion enveloped me as I pondered the money that remained in her account. I ensured that she possessed it. She resided with her mother. She had no significant expenditures. It appears that the mastermind and her two accomplices sought compensation for their discretion. They are coercing her, imposing a deadline, threatening to expose all the scandalous details to HR. She implored for assistance. I conveyed to her that returning to normalcy after this is impossible. Everything will transform. If she yields now, it will only lead to greater financial repercussions later. It would be wise for her to come forward to her boss and colleagues. It would prove more effective than enduring restless nights, anxiously anticipating the inevitable. She appeared to waver on that point, yet ultimately she posed the crucial question: what is to become of us? What position does that put us in? I informed her that there was no longer a U.S., the chapter has closed, and she should seek a lawyer to navigate the divorce proceedings. All I can offer is guidance on how she might navigate her work situation. However, it seems she may need to seek a different path after this. I also mentioned that she should seek therapy, as it's concerning for someone to laugh in my face. A week later, they find themselves in need of assistance to sort things out. She indicated the cake, and all I could muster in response was a casual acknowledgement. Yeah, I'm addressing that. Shortly after, she departed, leaving no indication of whether she would heed my counsel or resort to paying her coworkers' demands. Why is it always the colleagues?